saying that these outrages against journalism and free speech are something that cannot be stood, then a judge may consider that opinion. When it comes to people on the street and protests, I believe their attitude is not so sympathetic. But they are of a mind that if the reaction is large enough and if the noise is great, it may have some influence, but I doubt whether that would override a political or a media opinion, which they pay more regard to, I think, in truth. But I think, obviously, as we've said several times, it really is up to the public, because we know that the judges are not easily swayed and are certainly not receiving any information from the politicians or the media, with some minor exceptions, that this is such a pivotal and essential case to our democratic freedoms. So, but I think we have to take the activism, we have to take the protest, and for the Julian Assange case, as often with the human rights issues, it's been a decades-long battle, and we fight on, and hopefully we can get a resolution that the public will not accept if an extradition is actually imminent or about to happen. There was a gentleman right at the back who was waving frantically from the beginning.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, do you want to shout out your question?
Yeah, I've got a comment and a question, okay? I'll give the comment first. I'm looking forward to reading Neil's book, but if he ever had faith in British justice, and I understand he doesn't live in the UK, he obviously never heard of the Birmingham 6 or the Guildford 4 or the Macquarie 7 or a host of other cases over the last 40 or 50 years. My question is, and it's also a suggestion with it, do we have the names of the two scumbag Guardian journalists who grassed him up? We know that he stayed in the homes of Guardian journalists. In his book he writes about that. We know the Guardian printed his stories and also put fake news out about him. Would it be worthwhile having a protest outside the Guardian's office to try and get some publicity?
We do that and have done it.
I'd like to join you.
And that's a brilliant suggestion. And if you sign up to the Julian Assange Defence Committee newsletter,
I did, yeah.
Then you will get notification of some of those actions. The names of the journalists are Luke Harding.
Oh, he's an arsehole, yeah.
And I've forgotten the name of the other.
David Lee.
Yeah, David Lee.
Okay, thank you.
David Lee is Alan Rusbridge's son-in-law, by the way.
Coincidentally.
Anyone else? Yes, over there, waving. Yes.
I'm eager to know more about the whole case. So I was just wondering if, from your point of view, there are any elements of the prosecution that have any weight, or if you think there is anything at all that WikiLeaks has published that they shouldn't have published.
The legal advice that the Obama administration received, and I think the documentary did cover some of that, was the problem of prosecuting Julian Assange was the fact that they would have to prosecute the New York Times and the Washington Post for publishing the same information. So I think even Obama administration and the DOJ were reluctant to go forward with a prosecution, but it didn't stop them having secret grand juries and plotting to raise a prosecution or an extradition request in secret, and I think that was also covered in the documentary. Are there any legitimacy to the claims of the Espionage Act and the computer hacking or the computer intrusion charge? The Espionage Act in 1917 was a way of President Woodrow Wilson to attack the peaceniks and the anti-war movement in America, not really for spying. It was done to prevent those and to imprison those who spoke most vocally against war. And as the documentary also covered, it was the Obama administration that reenacted or reinvigorated the Espionage Act to prosecute whistleblowers and journalists. And really, Obama set the standard. And although people may complain about Trump's administration, who actually issued the extradition request, they were working on the case only a few years, whereas the Obama administration had been working on the case for 8 years or so. So I think we can put more responsibility on Obama. Is there any legal possibility or justification for these charges? Absolutely not. He's an Australian citizen. If he was going to commit treason, it would be in Australia. A non-US citizen cannot be a traitor to the US. And the evidence, which has been backed up by Chelsea Manning, was that she took the documents from the DOD in America and she passed them as any source would. She actually shopped them around the New York Times and the Washington Post, who refused to touch them. And it was only WikiLeaks, when she contacted them, who advised her mainly about secure ways of relaying this information to WikiLeaks. So absolutely no justification. And indeed, they are so squirming on the Department of Justice, they're trying to deny that the First Amendment of the Constitution, which guarantees free speech, could ever apply to a non-US citizen. And that issue has not been tested at law in the US, but they're trying to make an exception for the Julian Assange case. I hope that answers some of your questions.
If I can add something, that you asked if there's anything that was published that shouldn't have been published.
Only from like literally your opinions.
Yeah, that's right. The question from one point of view, that question was looked at during the Manning hearings, and that point was anybody harmed as a result of those? So there's an allegation that's been doing the rounds for years that Assange has blood on his hands, and that he published this information irresponsibly. So during the Manning hearings, that allegation was raised, and Manning's defense asked the Pentagon if they could establish that, if they could point to one case where an informer or anybody else was harmed as a result of these publications. They had a team of 120 people working on it, the WTF, believe it or not, the WikiLeaks task force, and they came back to the hearings and said, no, they hadn't managed to find a single case. So from the point of view, and by the way, a few years before that, when the publications first broke, the ex-Secretary of Defense of the United States, Robert Gates, said that these publications are very embarrassing for the United States, but they're not really that important. It's worth remembering that.
And if I could just, we can carry on outside because we will have to round up, but with questions and discussion. If I could just say on the question of redaction, which again relates to whether these documents are released responsibly or irresponsibly. It was Julian Assange who was absolutely specific and stringent about names, anyone who might have been harmed, possibly harmed by the release of this information with their name in it. It was redacted. And it was Luke Harding and David Lee, who were working with him at the time, who complained that he took too long to redact the documents. Again, they didn't cause any harm. The other thing I want to just make one point and then we need to finish, but the question of the American Espionage Act. I want to make 2 points about that. One is espionage is meant to be the revealing of secrets in a time of war, which will put the nation that is at the secrets are being revealed at risk, and therefore the population of that country at risk. In this case, we have the American people and other people around the world, but the American people being given information about war crimes committed by their own army, which is paid for by their own taxes. So, I guess the American population is the enemy of the American state. And I think I'll leave it there. We do need to finish now, I believe. Oh, I was just been told we got a little bit longer.
Is that all right?
Do one more.
Yeah, okay. Hand waving up there, yes?
I just want to ask a question in response to something that David said at the beginning. More freely talk to that about the case of Julian Assange being that kind of our rights are at stake, right? That is what you're saying. Our rights as citizens are at stake and all of that. I would argue, however, that like what the case shows is more that precedent doesn't really matter, and like the way that the justice system in the Western imperial powers works is very coercive and violent and like in a global way. And what I want to ask is what at which point do you think we draw a line and leave the existing nation states behind and just say, fuck it.
Do you mean should we as citizens just kind of rebel against or stop recognizing the states that we are citizens of?
Yeah.
That's one
Well.
for you, David.
Stop paying taxes.
That may come. That may
and
come.
It's
You know,
already
well,
happening.
well,
It's already happening in Europe,
yeah,
Italy,
well,
Netherlands, in different
yeah.
ways.
yeah. I mean, there are elements of that kind of thing happening. I'm not going to say whether I think we're at the point where we should all start doing that. There are wonderful things about the countries that we live in. The problem is that some of those wonderful things, like the elements of democracy that we do have, the system of law that we do have, is being abused not by us, the people, but by the people in power. So it's kind of up to us to raise some level of resistance and the level of awareness of these things. I'm not going to try to venture about whether we should go straight to a revolution or something like that now. I just, from where I stand, I just try to raise awareness of these things and try to put right this case, which I see as a fundamental one, because it's about the truth. And if people vote and give consent to their elected representatives on the basis of information that isn't right, then it's not participatory democracy. It's an uninformed democracy, and that's not a democracy at all.
Can I just add a very quick recommendation? There's a book called Death Ship by B. Traven, and it examines those very issues of borders, citizenship, what it means to be born in one country and try to move to another country. And I think that really opens my eyes when I read it about the nature of our nation states. And I think that was written in the late 20s and nearly 100 years ago in the 1920s. And it's still absolutely relevant today. And I think some of your questions may be not answered, but certainly investigated in that book by B. Traven.
Right, and may I say that the questions and contributions have been, I hope, a harbinger of a very interesting discussion outside in the cafe. Just yes?
Is it true that there's a protest every week in Belmarsh and Piccadilly Circus?
Oh, well, yes. I'm being reminded to remind you that...
It is true.
Thank you. Every Saturday from 4 until 6.
12 till 2.
No, no,
No, Piccadilly Circus.
Oh, sorry, Piccadilly. Yeah.
every Saturday from 4 until 6 at Piccadilly Circus. And for people gather with posters, with banners to call out for Julian Assange, and have done throughout all weathers. The only thing that stopped them is the lockdowns from and I was at one, a very particularly rainy one, and it was the first one after one of the lockdowns, and a man came by who was obviously a local person who worked locally around Piccadilly, and he's beaming from face to face, from ear to ear, and he said, "You're even here! My goodness, you're the first out!" After being shut in. So that's at Piccadilly from 4 until 6 on Saturdays, and Belmarsh, and that is from 12 until 2. And it's worth mentioning about Belmarsh, and indeed I would invite all of you at least to come out once. It's an hour and a half from anywhere in London. It's a grim, grim place. We gather, we shout out for Julian, we walk up to the gates, to the doors of the prison. Joe sends out wonderful photographs every Saturday, and we're told that although Julian Assange is housed on the far side, every single possible way in which somebody could be cruelly treated is being done to that man, including in this case putting him at the back where he can't hear us. However, there are prisoners that are housed close to the front, and they do hear, and we're told they tell him that we've been there. His birthday, his 51st birthday, was this Sunday, and we had a celebration, as it were, and sung happy birthday to him. And we're told that certainly the prisoners were wishing him a happy birthday. Some of the guards were also wishing him a happy birthday, and one of the nurses that cares for him. So even within the prison, there are people who are finding space to be human and to confront. Maybe not make a revolution, but make a moral stand insofar as it's possible for them to do. So I'm going to end now. Thank you very much for coming. We will be outside. Notzer's book is there. I do recommend it. Love to speak to you. And thank you very, very much for coming.